Hello everybody, welcome to number 27, I'm Jack, and this is a Ferrari Dino 208 GT4 Spyder. Now this is a car that has officially never existed, yet it is a genuine Ferrari. It's a story that needs to be unraveled. Now the base for this car, which is the 308 GT4, is an official factory product, albeit it came out as a Dino initially. But there has never been a convertible version of this car. Now there are three possibilities as to why this is the way it is. The first that the owner has heard of as a possible outcome is that Bertone himself, who did the original design of the car, did this as a one-off study, either to see if it was a viable option or perhaps later in its life as a precursor to the Mondial convertible, so to see how they could work the design. The second thing that has been mentioned is a possibility that Enzo himself commissioned it, maybe as a design study or maybe to use. And the third is that somebody just fancied something different and they just employed a designer, a garage, or a workshop to do the conversion. In this video, we're going to take a closer look at this car and look at how the conversion was done, look at the history, what we know about its past, and then try and come up with the most likely explanation. So first, a couple of things about the GT4 and about this one in particular, because this is a 208, so it's a very unusual Italian market only model. Now, the 308 itself was designed by Gandini's. It's interesting that he did the Lamborghini Huracan. That came out 3 years before this car in 1970. And it does look a little bit like Ferrari, in actual fact, copied the design and the layout of the Huracan when they made this. There's some similarities in the design, yes, but also they both use transverse V8s, which is a very uncommon layout. So the standard 308 GT4 was initially launched as a Dino only, but that car did come with a 2.9 litre flat crank V8, which produced, in theory, 250 horsepower. This is a 2 litre V8. This is the smallest still production V8 that was ever made. It produced only 170 horsepower, so weighing roughly the same as the other car. So why on earth would you do that? Well, at the time, Italy had an absolutely punitive tax system in place, whereas any car that had more than 2 litres had to pay a 40% tax surcharge. Hence, there's a few examples of cars where this has happened. Let's see how this one feels. You can feel that it's missing, I'd say, sort of a good 80-90 horsepower from the full fat cars, let's call them, 308s. But the engine just sounds different. It's a bit meaner, it's a bit snarlier. Of course, you have to rev this. Being a smaller engine, one of the most noticeable things is just the incredible lack of torque in comparison to the other one. It's still very smooth. It does like to, it likes to rev. And it seems to change personality around 5. The suspension is soft and comfortable, the wheels and tires as well. It has the original 14 inches, which help it ride well. And I have to say, I was expecting this to be an absolute nightmare in terms of scuttle shake. I don't know if they did any reinforcement structurally, but it almost, to me, it's not that bad. Sure, when you go over the bumpier stuff, you can feel the body flexing and you can feel it a little bit through the wheel, but I think the suspension is quite soft. I don't know if it's standard GT4. To me, it feels softer. Therefore, it works pretty well on this car. It absorbs the bumps. It doesn't transmit through to the body structure too much. and it doesn't immediately come across as something half-baked, which is what I was fearing. I thought it would be really obviously flexible, and you could just tell from the way it drove. But it drives really well. I'm not driving it obviously particularly hard right now. The steering has pleasant weighing. It has a nice sort of rate of turn-in. It's much better to drive than I thought it would be. Gearbox is a little bit obstructive. They're all different on these cars, on this era of Ferraris. This one is a little bit notchier, well, quite a bit notchier than it was on mine. It's not terrible, but it's not brilliant. I love it that it's trying so hard, but it doesn't translate into that much forward movement. Let's just do another bit through the gears and then I'll tell you a little bit more. Surely, that is just so amazing. If you agree, do give this video a like, because I think Dan deserves to see that people appreciated that. It just sounds great. Well, unbelievably, I love it. I didn't think I would. I was interested in the story of the car and everything else, but yeah, sorry to repeat myself, but I didn't think it would drive very well. Surely it couldn't. It's got the smaller engine, it has no power. It's been chopped, probably not strengthened, but either it has been strengthened or the suspension has been so well tuned that it's actually a very nice thing to drive. Now, the current owner of this car, Dan, he got it a couple of years ago. When he first got it, it had been sitting for, I think, at least 7 or 8 years. He's quite a young chap in his 20s, and he was at university at the time, and he did a lot of the work himself to recommission it. So I think a local garage helped him, did the fluids, the belts, all those kinds of things, so like a really major service. But then he completely reconditioned the carbs, which are 34s instead of 40s, so they're smaller than on the 2.9, unsurprisingly. They're 4 Webers, but he rebuilt those, he rebuilt the brakes. He did a really good job. It seems to be running extremely well. The brakes as well, they have great feel, power, absolutely great. On most 308s that I've driven, they're a little bit wooden, I think. Feel great on this car. So Dan, I think you've done a really good job. Now, in terms of the looks, I think that without the roof on, it's quite a pretty car. Maybe it doesn't look quite right from some angles, but it's not bad. I adore the original shape of the GT4. I think that Gandini shape, which is also very similar to the Stratos, that the rear, the way that it goes into the back of the car, I think is absolutely stunning, and obviously this loses that, but it's not a bad conversion. What is so beautiful is that you can get the absolute maximum flavor and satisfaction of that fantastic sounding engine without really being too antisocial in terms of the speeds that you're doing. Change down, put your foot down almost anywhere, it's not going to get you into trouble particularly. Okay, well, I absolutely love driving it, but let's take a closer look at the car itself, a bit of the history, how the conversion was done, and see if we can find out any more clues about its origins. So we know that this 208 was originally built in 1975 and that it did come out of the factory as a coupe. Unfortunately, from that point when it was built in 75 to 2003, there is very, very little information. What we do know is that it was in Switzerland at that point, and it was sold at a Bonhams auction to London supercar classic car dealer Joe Macari. Dan even still has the original Bonhams card saying do not touch in different languages, which had obviously been put on the window like that, but over time had slipped into the doors, and when he was fixing the windows he found them. Now it's interesting because there is still the original sort of description of the car for that sale, and they described it as a one-off by Bertone. Joe Macari imported it into the UK, and in 2004 Dan's grandfather bought it. Unfortunately, he recently passed away and Dan was left it in his inheritance. It is really nice that it stays in the family, and Dan himself has done so much work to it and intends to keep it forever. So in terms of history, we don't really have all that much to go on, apart maybe from Bonhams assuming or saying that it was converted by Bertone himself. Let's take a look at how the conversion was done and see if we can find any clues there. So on the face of it, when you look at the side of the car, it all looks pretty good. It's quite well blended in. The roof at this point, you can see here where it comes down, where it's joined to the side of the car. The way that this is put in looks pretty well done. This has all been changed here. The fact that it's put on by rivets like that, it's not the neatest job either, raises a few question marks perhaps. With the roof up, it's a fairly tidy design. Now ignore those corners there which are a little bit frayed. That's just because of the age of it. But on the whole, the way it's integrated into the roof isn't bad. The way it latches on, pretty professional. It uses the same kind of latches that were used at that time in the 70s and the 80s. There are a few things that to me look a bit odd if this had been done by Bertone or by a professional coach house. The way that some of these bits are finished is a little bit rough and ready. So you can see where the cut goes through to the side, the way these window frames have been cut as well. But I mean, on the other hand, what are you going to do? They didn't need to be cut. You have the window that goes up and down. There's only so much they could do to integrate it. So there's a couple of question marks from the way some of the conversion has been done, but some of the other bits are really, really impressive. So if you look at the original design, this whole part of the car has been redone. The engine lid is the same, but this whole panel has been completely changed. So there is no S-coupe there normally because it comes into the corner. The normal car comes down here, goes down in that direction. So this whole part at least has been redone. And when you feel around, you know, this is definitely, it's not a load of filler or, you know, or just fiberglass. This is all steel. I believe that is steel. It looks like steel. It feels like steel. The shape is very good. We were talking about it with Dan, and if you look along the flanks of the car, it's very nicely done. It's quite a difficult thing to do to convert this aspect of the car. This wasn't simply just a chop job. So this really is a bit of an enigma. Some parts of it I think are incredibly professionally converted. Some bits look a little bit more homespun. But all in all, it's still explainable. Even if Bertone did do this conversion, they didn't spend too much time on some bits of it. If it was just a design study, for example, they wouldn't worry too much. They would just get these bits, the important bits, which I think are very professionally done, they would take time on, the rest of it a little bit less. All the same, we really need your help. Do you know, do you have any information on this car? Who converted it? When it was converted? I will put the chassis number now up on screen. So if you know anything, or if the video has sparked anything that you can contribute, please put that in the comments. Thank you so much to Dan for bringing it down. Thanks to all of you for watching. I am super keen to do videos on cars like this, cars that have a history, have a story. So if you have anything, please get in touch at this address. Thank you so much, and see you for the next video.